All right, welcome everyone. We are here for modern NLP development for financial services. We have Viral Shah, VP of Product, and Jeremy Batt, Solution Center Manager with Amenity. We're going to be taking you through what's to be a great demo on really what you can do to accelerate great outcomes.
Thanks very much, Juan. I'm Viral Shah. I'm VP Product here at Amenity Analytics, and want to thank you for your time today. And we're excited to talk to you about how you can integrate NLP and text analytics more broadly into your workflows, into your solutions, and into your firm's technology and into your business outcomes. And if you're here with us today, then we salute you on your journey. I think that what we're seeing in the market is that people much more broadly are adapting and embracing the use of AI-driven and NLP-driven workflows across all of finance. So whether that be document analysis or being able to augment existing data sets, be able to make predictions and do analysis, we're seeing it happening in lots of different ways. And one core element of that journey is the decision of how does one bring together the tools and platforms that one requires to accomplish the objectives that your organization has. And so we're going to take you through a little bit of a journey of what those decisions are and how to think about them from the perspective of us and the customers that we are grateful to get to work with every day. And then after that, I'm going to have Jeremy walk us through some more details about our approach to give you some more insight under the covers. And then he'll also demonstrate a couple of the capabilities that we've built out that improve upon the platform that we've been building. And so, as everyone knows who's here, there's no surprise that much of the data that is structured has a robust ecosystem of analytics and display and analysis surrounding it. And so those decisions and the work being done on those data sets have largely been optimized. But there's a tremendous amount of extra information that exists that's largely still being processed by data analysts, by front office professionals, knowledge workers of all kinds across banks and funds and others and corporates. And so that work is largely still being done almost completely manually. And so by and large, much of it can be systematized and done through the use of technology. So we're very lucky at Amenity to get to work with really some of the top financial institutions in the world. And what that means for us is that we have production workflows at these clients. Everything that we've built is put through the paces by a number of different personas and player types that assure and validate that what we build is fit for purpose. There's a lot in the NLP world that is still really being developed and is not really fit for purpose. Where there's accountability required, where there's transparency required. And so, I think our heritage and our roots and the way that we've come to market has meant that we've been put through the paces on all those issues and things. And so as a result, we are where we are today, partly, thanks to our customers. The kinds of products that we have, we are, across the market, but, there's areas of like investment management, both on the fundamental and the quantitative side around specific kinds of uses around analyzing transcripts, understanding ESG disclosure and performance, and building all kinds of predictive signals to help drive the investment process. There's on the research side and for research creators and consumers, we've built workflow that helps in delivering high quality insights and being able to understand the content that one has built and being able to deliver it to broader audiences. On the regulatory side, we do a lot around filings analysis as well as communication analysis. And then we've also have dedicated deployments around different kinds of use cases in areas like voice of customer, sales enablement, and so forth. And really what we do in a nutshell, ultimately, is that there has to be a very strong ROI to deploying NLP. And there has to be a clear sense of understanding what that is. And so, sometimes that's about generating more revenue by being able to repurpose content, by being able to improve the quality of content, by being able to analyze data effectively. There's significant savings on the cost side where data analyst teams are doing what used to be manual, laborious but essential work that largely can be replaced and systematized by the work that we do, so that those teams can move on to higher quality in other areas. There's also a lot around risk mitigation, and then finally digital transformation is the term that we've all heard, but really, I think that these agile operating models that can be scaled up and scaled down by deploying NLP pipelines is extremely attractive to the organizations that we work with. And so, so what does it take to build such a pipeline, and what kind of effort is involved, and what are the challenges? And so, we're going to walk through this piece by piece. But I think that what we want to do is help educate and discuss, what the challenges are, and what are the kind of trade-offs and considerations one should make in that process of going from documents to insights. And so, here, this is a kind of a snapshot of all the different steps that need to be performed to do robust analysis on top of content, to enrich the content, to create signals, to build downstream applications, and so forth. And so I'll walk you through these step by step, and we'll talk about them in some depth, and then we're going to show you, what the outcomes are, and then also what it's like to work with us around this area. So this first step around data gathering. So, one needs to have the right documents to be able to analyze them. And so the teams that we work with, if you embark upon this journey on your own, essentially you're involved in doing a lot of data sourcing of documents, even open documents that are broadly available, as well as permission documents and documents that like transcripts that one must pay for. And then aggregating that, you've got to involve a sourcing team, and making sure that that data is complete and that it's being delivered continuously. Then there's a huge data cleaning effort. And so in doing data cleaning, you need to deal with issues around document formatting. And so, there's all kinds of things, like there's line breaks, special characters, and just a huge number of corner cases that we've evolved to solve over the years. Then finally, when one has done all of that, there's the mapping and formatting of that data. And so that involves normalizing this data, because one's analysis is not based on a single document type or data set. It ends up being across many. And so being able to normalize this, be able to make sure that information about one company is from a transcript source or a filing source, all of that data is coming together with the same source designation. So once one has done that, now there's all of the steps involved with the beginning of what's the NLP pipeline. So there's tokenization, which really is building and managing the vocabulary. And so there, we leverage Blinkfire from Microsoft, which is the highest performance tokenization tool. But we're always out there looking at what the best approaches are and integrating and constantly updating and improving the way that we do it. Similarly, then, one then needs to be able to do all the named entity recognition. And so there, I think that the domain specificity is critical about being able to understand companies around people, being able to understand things like brands and suppliers and so forth. And so being able to do that really, really well, and be able to disambiguate information about Amazon the river, Amazon the company, and even in much more depth is a critical piece of the process. And so there's constantly, we're leveraging the best of open source and AI-driven approaches to be able to do this, but it's a constant evolution, and one who's integrating disparate tools needs to make sure that these steps integrate well together, and that you're constantly updating and improving upon it. Then finally, there's financial data enrichment, and then there's co-reference resolution. So now that you're done with all that, now you can actually start the model development process. I think for a lot of folks, the excitement around NLP is that one gets to build a model that delivers an analysis, but that's really kind of the middle step of the process. There's a lot of pre-processing of content, post-processing, plus output designation, and so forth. And so, but when we're in this stage, there's rule-driven approaches, and then there's AI approaches for being able to analyze text. And we're kind of a hybrid of both. And one of the knocks historically on rules-based approaches is that you've got to build a rule to represent every single thing that you're looking for. And that's massively inefficient, and it's very challenging. And so what we've built out with the workshop system that we're going to be demonstrating shortly is the ability to take, be able to create groups and be able to create patterns. And so if you create groups, if you think about groups, they're essentially concepts. And so there's concepts like development, there's KPIs like revenue and EPS and so forth. And we create hierarchies around these concepts so that you can then leverage them for the kinds of phenomena you want to understand about them at scale. So if you can bundle them together, you can, let's say you have 30 or 40 different concepts you want to analyze, you need to adjust the polarity, but essentially, you're being able to, what you do next upon those around these groups is that you can then build phenomena around them, so you can gain a lot of efficiency with the next step, which is creating patterns. And so when you create patterns, essentially there's patterns like, for example, the phrase increase. Increase or set to increase or is going to increase is a phenomenon ascribed to KPIs, inside of financial disclosure. And being able to combine all the different patterns and be able to understand that all of these are related to each other means that in each of these steps, creating groups and patterns, you're multiplying your effectiveness at creating rules, and you're being highly systematic about the rules that you create inside the system. And so what that means is that you can then, when you move into rule creation, the ability to then get real scale leverage around being able to create the rules that designate the kind of, whether it's sentiment or tagging or prediction that you're trying to do on top of the text that you're analyzing, you can do it extremely rapidly and effectively and systematically. And if you don't deploy such an approach, it means you're creating rules for every single case. And ultimately, in these kind of rule-based systems, what happens is that you end up with overlapping rules. You end up with a lot of issues around synchronization and lack of consistency in these approaches. And so what we've done is we've taken a rule-based approach, but being driven by an AI-driven approach to build out our platform. Then finally, once you're done with that, you've now got to involve business, data analysts, and data science teams to be able to understand what you've got and improve upon it. So there's sentence similarity. You may want to capture a concept like buy now, pay later, which a firm and other people are optimizing and growing as a market. But there's other terms that mean the same thing. For example, installment-based payments. And so being able to find similar sentences is really one of the most critical steps to being able to improve the precision and recall of your system to the level that people demand in finance. And so we use Finbert and other platforms like SensitiveVec to be able to do portions of that. Then you need to be able to do data analysis. You have to review your output. You need to be able to track and measure your precision and recall. In general, almost all of the engagements we take on have strict requirements around recall, around precision, and as a matter of managing stakeholders and being able to show that you're achieving the outcomes that they're looking for, being able to see that and be able to communicate that across the organization is critical. And then finally, you need to, well, now that you're done with all of it, you have to still deploy it to production. And so in doing that, you have to establish the ingestion and processing pipelines. You have to monitor them for all the content sets that you aggregate. In our case, what we've learned is that our clients benefit from the insight that we deliver to them on top of transcripts and filings and research and so on. And they really benefit from the fact that we've already established the relationships to source the content. And so really it's about delivering the insights that they require on top of the content, as well as their own content, by being able to do this integration for them. So then we deploy it in production. And then we, and as part of that, we process. There's often a post-processing step that's involved with, adding new kinds of data sets or reformatting the content to be, used by downstream services. And then finally, we build applications and we create APIs. And so, here sometimes what we do is we hand it off to internal teams at large institutions that then build out visualizations, that build out alerts and so forth. But we build those out too. And so really kind of the takeaway here is that if you're partnering, if you're choosing a vendor, it's critical to find someone where the results are transparent, that they can deliver quickly, and that the quality, meaning the precision, the recall, is quite high. And so, and also that you've got the ability to then bring it in the format that you require, whether that's alerts or a dashboard or an application. And so ultimately, when folks embark on this journey on their own, they take what they expect to be a very linear journey, and then ultimately what ends up, being kind of very circuitous. They find the best component for one piece of it, but then often can't bring the whole pipeline together, or may end up achieving a set of results, but then can't optimize upon it because of the way that they've structured their pipeline. And so, ultimately, in going back to the journey, I think even those with very large teams focused on NLP and document analysis really kind of encounter different challenges. And so as long as one is aware of all the challenges and is willing to put in the commitment and has stakeholder approval as well as the resourcing from all the different teams, then there are those who are going to be very successful at building their own pipelines internally. but that's probably a small portion of the market. More and more, I think these fit for purpose NLP pipelines that understand, have domain expertise, that have the ability to expand as a solution set across all the different things that one requires, are going to end up becoming much more successful in the market. And so what I'm going to do now is turn it over to my colleague. So let me just finish with one statement, which is just how the world works when you work with us. Really, what we find to be true across all of our clients is that they have insights that they're looking to generate. Either they have existing data analyst teams, or there's a way that they assess risk, or there are ways that they do tagging and so forth already. And so they understand what the rules are. Often they're written up, they understand what they're looking for. They can produce some examples. They don't want to sit and create huge amounts of label data, and we don't require it. But the rule creation aspect is something, and the expertise is something that our clients have and that we readily absorb from them because we have the domain expertise. So really, rule creation and then giving us annotation and feedback on top of the data that we deliver are the only two pieces that we require from our clients. We do that whole pipeline, and we deliver portions and aspects of the output that they require really every single day. And so I think that the world is evolving, and so more and more people want to take the reins and own more of that model development process. And so as part of that, what Jeremy, my colleague, is going to show you is that we're building ways to now extend access to our platform by being able to create structures in our taxonomy editor, or be able to create the rules yourself inside of the next generation of our authoring environment, which you're going to see today, which is called Workshop. And so really what we do is we find a way to partner by helping our clients focus on their insights, and which we turn into systematic intelligence. And so, what happens ultimately, and what we've learned from our clients, is that the outcomes that they're able to generate versus previous approaches ends up being faster. It ends up being significantly more cost effective when considering both the initial cost, the licensing, the OpEx, and the upkeep, as well as the personnel. And also, I think there's like one of those studies that says, I think like 82 or 83% of all data science projects fail. Our success rate ends up being, multiples of what folks are able to do. And I think part of that is that, the approach that we take, both, domain specificity, highly flexible system that works well together, and as well as our team are able to achieve those kinds of results. And then this is what the output looks like. Ultimately, this is one example of how people benefit from the insights that we deliver is, via a SaaS platform where people do, ESG analysis. And so with that, I'll hand it off to Jeremy.
Great, thanks, Viral. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jeremy Batt, and I'm the Solution Center Manager here at Amenity. And as Viral had discussed, we're going to go over a couple things today. I'm first going to go over a little bit about working with Amenity, what that kind of relationship looks like. Then we're going to talk about some of the technical capabilities. So Viral talked a lot about us achieving really high levels of precision and recall. So I'm going to explain some of the ways that we're able to do that, some of our kind of Amenity NLP superpowers. And then I'm going to do a demo of our authoring platform that Viral was alluding to. Viral, if you want to make me the host. Great. So one of the great things you get from Amenity is that we have a very comprehensive foundation of text. We're trained on the right content, and we've been working for years on earnings call transcripts, SEC filings, news articles, and private documents. And what we're able to achieve through that is that we understand the language of business, but in many different tones, because all of these different document types have different language patterns, have different sources of knowledge, and we're able to incorporate all of that into our NLP. So working with Amenity from day one, you get a comprehensive foundation of all the different types of documents that we've worked on and all the different logic and nuance associated with them. One of the other great things is that we are highly configurable. So once again, on day one, you work with us and decide, well, out of this really comprehensive foundation for NLP that you have, what's important for you and how do you see the world? You can edit the taxonomy by narrowing, expanding, and readjusting the logic of different classifications, as well as editing, removing, and adding new ones and at a very rapid pace. You can look at the sentiment. We know that different firms see the world a little bit differently, and we want to be able to help you, lead you straight to that in the text. We incorporate industry-specific context. We incorporate metadata into every single extraction so that it's able to achieve sentiment at the correct classification level. Materiality is extremely important for different clients and different use cases. And because we factor in all of the different linguistic clues of text, we're able to change the classifications and the weighting and the subsequent, appearance or lack of appearance of certain, types of extractions or type of logic. And as I just said, weighting, we've incorporated a dynamic scoring mechanism for weighting, where we can look at both the classification type as well as the surrounding context in order to increase or decrease that weight. And finally, there are many additional properties that we work with as well. In many use cases, we build custom linguistic properties based on the specifications of the client, but we've worked with everything by tagging thesis statements so we can kind of change how those appear in the output to adding confidence levels. So once again, you start off with this very large base taxonomy. And we like to say that whatever you're looking for, we already capture it. Perhaps we need to map certain classifications to a different name or change the logic of how they're appeared. Sometimes it's consolidating event types and other times it's expanding them. But either way, we're already capturing in text what you want. We just have to work with you to make sure that it's classified appropriately for the use case. So one of the things that we're going to be very excited to launch in November is our taxonomy editor, which allows kind of an unparalleled level of collaboration between us and the client for making decisions about how the classifications in their NLP model are made. So you can see here's a representation of how that looks, where the client can dig in and decide what additions and changes and edits that they want to make to the existing taxonomy. This information automatically goes to the model development team, and we can craft the NLP model to fit those specifications. It also gives a great insight and access to the ideas and logic of what's being currently extracted by the model. So once again, really excited to roll this out in November, and excited to get feedback from our clients on how well it's performing. So now I'm going to go into our technological capabilities. And these are, once again, our NLP superpowers and allow us to hit the levels of precision and recall that Viral was talking about earlier. So right off the bat, we have an automatic classification system, and this allows you to focus on what matters. We can take a concept and we can classify it by nuance. What you see before you is a group of sentences that all exist around kind of a simple linguistic pattern of a financial metric increasing or improving. But as you can see, we can give vastly different event classifications and even sentiment associated based on the context of the sentence. The elements that are being boxed are some of the entities that our engine pulls in. Our engine pulls in all of the relevant entities to extraction, and it can use those to manipulate the classification and sentiment that is assigned. So, and what the purpose of that is to give you the most specific and accurate classification possible. So if we understand, specific financial metrics, we can give that a different classification than an extraction that doesn't have specific metrics. When we understand, like in the second to last example, that while this financial metric climbed, it climbed less than the estimated value, and we can assign that actually a negative sentiment. Multi-entity targeting is probably the most important thing in doing news analysis and also analysis of other kind of multi-entity documents like broker research. And essentially what we can do that other systems can't do is we can, with a very, very high level of accuracy, attribute all of the right extractions to the correct entity. So in a news article that mentions Disney and with Netflix, we can take that same text about better competing with Netflix, and we can assign it both with a positive sentiment to Disney as well as a negative sentiment to Netflix. And I do want to say that this does not just work for companies. We have done multi-entity targeting on currencies, politicians, macroeconomic factors, real estate properties. Kind of the sky's the limit in the types of entities that you want to hit. But what we do is we use our multi-entity targeting along with co-reference resolution to make sure that we're only attributing the correct extractions to the entity. So we have many different ways of doing deep contextual analysis. And this is really important because it allows us to incorporate the surrounding context of a text, whether that's the paragraph or the full document, whether that's incorporating the metadata, and we can give you the most specific and correct classification. In this case, what you see are two sentences that we are able to understand meaning because we do a full linguistic parse of them. So if you imagine you're an ESG analyst and you're wading through lots of text that's riddled with false positives because terms like climate and diversity and environment and ecosystem are the types of terms that can create a lot of noise in an ESG data set because they have a lot of different meanings, especially in business text. And what we're able to do, because we do a full linguistic parse, is understand when it's the right version of that, and we can classify it appropriately. One of the things that we do on earnings call transcripts, in addition to other types of documents, is understand the topics. In this case, this is an excerpt from our deception model, which looks for instances where there is maybe a lack of clarity by executives that could expose some underlying and unknown issues with company performance. In this case, we pull in the topics from the question and assign them to the answer. So although the executive in their answer doesn't at all mention anything about M&A, we're able to say that contextually this is relevant because we were able to contextually assign it in the question, and we can attach that to this extraction here. So we not just know that the executive is possibly being evasive, but they're being evasive about M&A, which gives you kind of paralleled insight into the discussions and topics mentioned on these calls. For one major regulator, we have to perform at over a 99% level of precision. In fact, we perform over 99.5% level of precision. And what that means is that we have to incorporate a multi-factor approach at looking at different conditions within the text. And only when all of those conditions are met, we want to flag that for our client to review. You know, instead of reviewing tens of thousands of documents themselves, what they get from us is the ability to say that our NLP engine was able to capture all of these different elements. And when all of those elements are hit, we send an alert to our client, and that gives them the very small percentage of documents that they actually need to review. Once again, because we do a full linguistic parse, we give you the ability to use all of the aspects of text that are necessary for the use case. So we can understand forecast language, hypothetical language, historical language questions. We can give those different classifications. We can assign them different weights. We can turn them on and off depending on the context. It really gives you the ability to be able to only take the text that's important for you. We know that many market participants are only interested in forward-looking language, or there's a really brief window of historical extractions that seem material. So what we do is go a step further. So when there's not necessarily explicit mention to temporality in text, when you're not necessarily saying that something happened last year, we go a step further. We can compare the extractions within the text to the metadata. So if there's discussion about a particular date, we can compare that to the publication date of the article, and we can decide, okay, is that within a reasonable time frame for materiality? And that even happens with unnormalized dates. So you'll often see dates like the end of September or fiscal quarter 3. We're able to normalize these and compare these to actual dates, so you have an apples to apples comparison for whatever the material time frame is. And kind of similar to this, we're able to use these linguistic elements to take out the noise and focus on what's most important. Here's an excerpt of a customer feedback, in which case we really just want to focus on what's happening now. Things in the past or hypothetical language about what might happen next is not truly what the customer is coming to you to say. So we want to focus on exactly what that is. And in this case, it's exactly that middle extraction, that they are having trouble reporting a claim on the website. And while in the past, reporting a claim on the phone was easy, and in the future, they're hoping that the repair goes quickly, what they're really focusing on right now is this reporting a claim on the website. And for one of our clients, I had a really good interaction with, after we showed them kind of preliminary output on a similar model, where they said, wow, so my analysts don't have to review tens of thousands of these anymore, and we can just generate the insights from them. That's the type of value that we want to bring to your use case, to be able to cut out all the noise and give you the insights that matter. So now I'm going to go into a demo of our authoring platform. So, as they say, this is kind of where the magic happens. This is where we're able to create NLP models to a very high level of precision and recall. So what you see before you is our authoring platform, and you see a document and earnings call ingested into it. Right away that you'll notice that there are, text extractions being made. These are being made both by, linguistic rules that were developed, as well as suggestions by our software on patterns and appearances that are perfect fodder for creating linguistic rules. So as a model developer, I would go through this and want to make sure, kind of using my domain expertise of what's going on, that we are capturing everything appropriately and not missing any recall. So if I have a use case on, let's say, market share, I want to go through and make sure that we're identifying all of the material instances of market share and classifying them appropriately. In instances where I see missing recall, all I have to do is go in and understand the text. So if they believe that they might be losing share to other sellers, I probably want to add this into our model. So right away, what I'm going to do is add in that meaningful text, and then I can create tests with the model in order to show whether it's being extracted or not. And one of the really powerful elements of this that Viral had mentioned earlier is that while we have a human in the loop who's looking with their domain expertise at what's important and what's not important, our engine is able to provide a lot more. Right away, you'll see that the sentiment to this is already understood by the engine to be negative based on all of the different rules that have been written before. What you'll also see is these groupings of terms, and this is what Viral was talking about earlier. So although I haven't written any business logic and I haven't written any linguistic rules in this, we're already able to understand all of the meaningful patterns that are occurring within this sentence already. And that gives the perfect kind of machine-ready material and fodder for creating new linguistic rules. So as a model developer, I'd go through the process of this and turn all of kind of the patterns that it's recommending to me into the linguistic rules that I need, and I'd add those as a test to make sure that it's being hit appropriately by our model. Another really important aspect I wanted to go through is our ability to do annotations and review. So let's continue on this market share theme, and I want to go in and make sure that the model is hitting this appropriately. So once again, we have a human in the loop who's working to kind of increase the recall and precision of the model, but we have plenty of functionality within the model already. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to find similar sentences. So that's using the existing linguistic patterns that we've identified, and we're using the 50-cent service to understand similar sentences. What that allows us to do is get a perfect round of training data for annotation and new linguistic rule writing. And once we have those, we can make sure that the model is kind of performing as needed, as improving all the time. So what we have the ability to do is go in here and, using this service of similar sentences, go through and reject and approve sentences that are kind of relevant to our case. So if we want to reject, that's automatically added into our annotation system. And anything that we find is important and that we want to add, it's already there and right there for us. So it's both kind of a human approach to understanding and internalizing what makes material text, and also a machine approach to providing us suggestions based on what would be the best thing to write linguistic rules on. Once I've rejected and approved annotations, then what I can do is I can run that. I can run those annotations on the model. And what that allows us to do is constantly improve with the model and provide kind of an unparalleled level of transparency to the client. What this shows is all of these sentences that we've both marked should be matched by the model and should not be matched by the model. And it gives us kind of a routine and ongoing level of kind of F1 testing on the model, where all the time, all of these annotations we've made, we can now see if the model is matching or not matching them. So both dynamic and a very transparent way to kind of both monitor the ongoing success of the model, but also make sure that what we're doing is improving. And if I see anything in these annotations that doesn't match expectations, I can go in and I can fix that until we reach the desired levels of precision and recall. That's all right there for the client to be able to see.
Thanks so much for spending time with us today. If I think just by virtue of your presence here today, I think that you're embarking on the journey, or at least curious about understanding how to best leverage text analytics and natural language processing in your different environments, and whether it be client driven, whether it's around cost reduction, whether it's around generating alpha. We produce solutions in all these different areas, and so I think that we'd love to chat with you about the kinds of questions you might have, about the kinds of platforms you're evaluating and the use cases you're considering. I think that we, as a firm, we've evolved from building solutions to now building dedicated products. And as we continue on this journey, I think that there's a number of different use cases that we're seeing being adopted and adapted to constantly in the market. And we think the next 5 to 7 years are going to be just a time of incredible upheaval of existing processes. And there's going to be so much automation that where NLP, and especially domain-specific, highly transparent, high-quality NLP will play a major part. And so love to hear from you about it. And you can contact us at amenityanalytics.com. As enthusiasts, we're happy to talk to you about the different kinds of approaches and hear more about the kinds of use cases and even questions. I think this is a market where there's a number of different vendors with very big claims out there. And there's a lot of promises being heralded, especially by like machine learning and a lot of deep learning approaches. And so there's a lot of places where there's, as you saw, the maze. There's roadblocks in the journey. There's also places where there's incredibly important points to consider around the tools and processes that you use. And so we would love to help direct you the right way. And thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much.